Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you how to make this pop-up snowman card with an optional shaker twist. The supplies you're going to need for this project is a cardstock paper. I recommend a heavyweight, about 80 pound to 100 pound. You'll want a hot glue gun, you'll want some liquid craft glue also, and you may also want some scrapbooking tape. You will need a Cricut machine or some form of cutting machine that works with SVG files. You'll need to have a scoring wheel if you're working with the Maker models, or a scoring stylus if you're working with the Explorer machines. You may also want a Cricut pen if you're planning to write a message on the back of your card like we are here in this project. And if you plan on approaching this with the shaker option, then you will also want to either have craft board or chipboard. You'll need acetate or cellophane, and then you'll need to have your glitter shapes and confetti for the inside of our shaker option. You may also need the 12 by 24 inch mat in order to cut the envelope to the appropriate size. And of course you'll need my snowman pop-up cards and templates, which are linked below for you in this video description. First, let's make sure we set everything up in Design Space correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and import my files by visiting that upload button to the left-hand side. You'll want to click on Upload Image and then browse your computer to bring the file in. You'll want to navigate to wherever you have saved the file and then bring it in here, and you'll see a preview of it, and you can click on Upload in the bottom corner. You'll want to highlight it under Recent Uploads and click Add to Canvas. So first, an important note on scaling when you bring this in. If you do want to adjust the size of this card at all before you cut it out, then you need to make sure you're adjusting it as a group. So you'll want to make sure everything is selected when you scale it. Like if you want to scale it a little bit larger, then you're going to want to scale it as a group, because otherwise if you don't do that, you're going to change the proportions and the card will not come together correctly if you're scaling individual pieces. So just make sure you scale it as a group if you decide to change the file. I do not recommend making this super small. My card is going to be a little over 6 inches high, just to give you an idea of what my card's going to turn out to be like, and that is approximately what the file will import as for each of these top pieces here. So if we ungroup here, we will see our file is about 6.3, which is right around where my card's going to be, and the file will import at about that size. If it doesn't for any reason, then of course you can just scale as a group and bring it up to size that way. Next, you need to decide, am I going to be doing the shaker variation, or am I going to keep the tree layer that is behind our snowman here? So if you plan on doing the shaker option, you will need to cut out these layers right here, which I will talk more about in just a second. If you do not plan on doing the shaker option, you can delete this entire group of files right here. You will not need it. If you're planning on doing the shaker option, then you will want to replace that with the green tree piece that we're seeing here. I did both, as you'll see in the video, and we can change them out. Now, if you're going to be doing the shaker option here, you will want to ungroup this one piece here, and there's several layers. So we have the topmost layer here, which will be cardstock. The light blue layers here represent our cellophane or acetate that we'll be using as a clear window effect. And then this brown piece here represents our craft board or chipboard. And then this is our base piece here, which allows us to connect it into the card. So when you ungroup that part for the shaker effect, then you'll see these different layers here. And just make sure you cut those out according to, as I mentioned, and it will also be written out in that blog post so you can see it in a written format. I'm also going to import my envelope here real quick because we need to set score lines for one of the items on the card, and we also need to set the score lines for the envelope. Now, two things to do with the envelope here. Aside from setting the score lines, you will also need to make sure that the envelope is scaled to fit however you have scaled your card, excuse me. So you want to ungroup this first, and let's just change the score line, or change the line here to score. So you'll see a square that's sitting on top, and you look over here in the layers panel, you can see that, and you can actually click on it and select it. You're going to want to go to Operation and change it to Score. And then once you've changed that to Score, click and drag over the envelope and the score line, and use that attach tool at the bottom of the layers panel. That way the score line stays exactly where we want it. Otherwise, Cricut will separate the score line onto another mat and your envelope won't get properly scored. So that's what you need to do there. And let's change these lines over here on these long rectangular pieces. We also need to change those to score lines. So click on one of those. Over here in the layers panel, you should see the option with the two little dashed lines. Just click on that, and again, change the operation to score. Click on this one, and just that piece, and change the operation to score. and then let's click and drag over the score line and the navy blue piece in my case here. Even if it's grouped, you still have to use that attach tool to keep them, that score line and that base piece together. So we're attaching those score lines there. And then one other thing I want to mention is this piece right here is an optional item that can be added to the back side of our round globe area, and you can write a message on it. So if you want to grab that and prep it, let me just get all this off my screen here. I'm going to group that, hide it. We could take just this piece and we could write a message on it using our text tool in Design Space. So I would click the text tool and I'm just going to put Merry Christmas with love, Abby. And I've already changed this font because I was working with it beforehand, but you may want to use the drop down menu here to find a font that you want. It's really important that you filter by writing fonts when you're wanting to do writing with a pen so that you don't end up with bubble letters. So I suggest clicking on the writing fonts, and it will only filter out the fonts that will write as you would write with your hand. It won't do like those outline bubble letters. So pick a font, and then once you have done that, it'll change on your screen. I want to align this to the center, so I'm going to click that center button under the alignment with the text selected. I'm going to scale this down, just dragging at the corner there with that arrow. And you can click and drag over both of these pieces and use the align tool to center it, to make sure that it is in the center of our piece here. And then once you do that, just like we did with the score lines, you need to attach this text to the actual little card cutout behind it. So make sure that you click and drag over both of those pieces and use that attach tool at the bottom. If you don't do that, then this will start writing on a separate mat and it won't come out the way you want it to. So make sure you use that attach tool. All right, so that's all the setup. Let's go ahead and get to crafting this card. So I'm going to start cutting out my materials now on my Cricut machine. Once my machine is flashing and telling me to load my paper, then you're going to go ahead and press that button, load your mat, and proceed with all of the layers that we need to cut out in our different colored cardstock. All of our pieces have been cut out for this card now, so we're going to start assembling it. I like to start with building a little snowman first before we start putting all of our layers together. Likewise, for the shaker option with the confetti on the inside, I will be showing that at the very end. And if you plan on doing the shaker option, then you would just want to choose either the snowflake or the tree layer to replace it with. I like to take the tree layer out if I'm going to be doing the shaker option. So that is just up to your preference whether or not you plan to do that step, and I will show that at the end as an alternative. So let's start with assembling the snowman here. So I'm going to take this very front layer and I'm going to begin building these little pieces on here. It's not at all hard, it just takes a few moments to put all the pieces together. I don't recommend making your card very small because if it's too small, then these pieces are going to be very small and they're going to be hard to get on. So let's start first with the snowman's hat and body. So we can get the hat lined up right there. And I'm going to be using just a Tombow clear aqua glue for this project, but there's lots of other glue out there that works great for paper crafts, so you may already have a favorite brand of yours, but I have resources for mine with the link below in this video description. So I'm going to place that hat there, and then I'm going to take my snowman here and add some glue on him. Next I'm going to add on his nose and arms, so I'm doing the orange pieces here. And you'll notice right at the top there's a little tippy top of his nose that'll help you line it up. And then let's add the arms on, and they'll go on seamlessly if you have them the correct direction. So just make sure that you're putting them on the correct direction, and if not you might need to reverse it. And let's add the scarf on next here. So I'm going to flip that. So I'm just adding on these little scarf pieces here. I laid them out first to make sure they were lined up properly, and it can be very helpful with some of these pieces to be taking a look at the image on your screen in Design Space or whatever cut software you're using as you're assembling this, just to make sure you're getting those pieces on there in the right spots. And let's do the little mittens next here. We're gonna get those lined up here. And I just like to put a little bit of this glue right on the base of the mitten. And then you'll take the little overlay piece and put it right on the top there. Make sure you get those edges aligned. So I'm just placing those little mittens right onto our design there. And his little mouthpiece there. All right, so our little snowman guy here is good to go. We got all those layers on there. It looks really cute. And now is the fun part where we actually get to put together the 3D card effect. So you're gonna have 3 of these for one card cut out. They're all the same size. And you're gonna wanna start with the top front piece and the very back piece. You're going to want to get those connected first, and then we're going to add in these additional pieces. So let's start first with the back piece here. You're going to want to pick 1/8. It doesn't matter, they're exactly perpendicular on both sides, or symmetrical, excuse me, symmetrical on both sides. So it doesn't matter which way you go. You just want to pick one and thread it through the little slots, just like that. And make sure you press it so that it's all the way butted up against where it can't go any further. And then you want to bend it. So you're gonna actually just bend it right where it stops. And you wanna put a little glue there. So this is where having the hot glue gun I find more helpful than the liquid glue, because ultimately we want this to set rather quickly so that we can get the card assembled. And if you want to keep using your liquid glue, you can, but I would wait at least 15 minutes in between attaching these tabs and assembling the rest of it to make sure things don't shift on you when you're trying to do your assembly process. So I'm just going to put a little hot glue right there on that one tab and then fold it. Let it hold there for a second, and you're going to repeat that with the other 2 as well. Just going to slip it through, push it all the way up, crease it, just like that. It really doesn't matter which way you go with the crease on the back side, just make sure that you crease it. And then a little bit of hot glue. Hold that one more time. That. And okay, and then once you get them in there, kind of just straighten them out a little bit. So you should have something that looks like this at this point. Now I'm going to repeat the same thing, adding this one on the front. And the reason I do this one first instead of adding these next is because it gives it more structure and stands on its own. However, if you find this difficult, you could absolutely go ahead and slide these on first and then put this one on last if that's easier for you. This to me is just a little bit easier because it gives the whole card more structure and it sort of lets it stand up while I work these on. So you're just going to repeat the exact same thing by putting those little slots right through. Same thing, you're just going to want to crease that right as you butt it all the way up as far as it'll go, and then crease it right there. Add just a little bit of hot glue so it'll dry quickly. Put that on. Alright, so now we have the structure of our card here. We've got the basic structure of it put together. So it should look something like this from the bottom, the top, the sides, and the back. Just something somewhat similar, just like that. And then we're going to slide these on here. So I like to do the snowflake layer here as the second to last, and then the trees behind the snowman, but you could ultimately change that if you want to. So all you need to do is these little slots here are going to line up to the slots that are remaining on our card that we just put together. So these little connecting pieces here, they'll have 2 slots that'll match up. Excuse me, they'll have 3 slots here that'll match up because we have 3 pieces of them. So it'll match these 3 right here when we go and slide them on. Be patient with this part because it will take you a moment or two to get it settled in. It doesn't go on like completely effortlessly. You will have to wiggle it around because you're trying to get 3 different pieces to all line up and match each other. So it will work. You just got to kind of wiggle it a little bit. And once you get it on, then it usually is good to go. You don't have to do anything else after that. And next I'm going to add this one on. Now, if you're planning to do the shaker edition, then you would want to omit one of these, and I would omit this one just in my opinion, but that's really your preference. So again, choose where you would want to put the shaker option if you're planning on replacing one of these with the shaker option that I'm going to show you at the end. But I'm going to show you this part here since I already have it, and this would be the non-shaker version. It can be helpful to put your fingers on the bottom here and then have your fingers here on the top to help work those slots together. Okay, there we go. So now we've got those layers on there and that looks really good. At this point you can actually close the card down and reopen it. I like to kind of go each direction once or twice just to kind of settle everything in there. But that's how the card will ultimately collapse. We still have to add a few finishing touches here. So our final part here is to wrap the base in this to give it a nice finished base look, and then we could add our little let it snow sign. Before I get to this part, I am going to show you the shaker part. So if you're wanting to do the shaker piece instead of, let's say, the green piece, then I'm going to show you how to assemble that. So if you choose to do that option, then you're going to want to have this blue piece that you're seeing here. You'll have your 2 pieces of acetate or cellophane plastic, your piece of craft board, and then your finishing border piece so that we don't see the craft board. So let's go ahead and start assembling that first. The very first thing you want to do is take your first piece of acetate and this piece here, and you want to just lay it directly on. Make sure it is aligned the proper direction and everything's lining up and you don't need to accidentally, reverse it. Maybe you picked it up the wrong direction. So make sure it's aligned properly. And I'm just going to grab my glue here and we're going to go around this edge. Now ideally it would be great to use hot glue because it would dry very quickly. However, I have done hot glue and one of the problems I run into is it gets very thick and it doesn't make for a clean edge. So as much as it isn't fun to wait for the liquid glue to dry, it's much thinner, more flexible, clear, and it just looks better in the end. So I recommend going the route of with the clear liquid glue like I'm doing here, just for best results when you're dealing with this. Plus, if you get anything around the edges here, you're not going to be able to see it because it's going to be thin and clear and you won't be able to tell that it's even there. The next part that would go on here would be our craft board piece. So you could use a chipboard if you want a little more space. I'm using a thinner craft board here, but I have used chipboard as well. I have a shaker cake topper tutorial I'll link below for you. It's kind of similar process to this. And you'll want to place this on next because what this is doing is acting as a spacer for us to have that confetti or little cutout confetti pieces inside there. I don't know what else you would call them, glitter or sequences, whatever you want to call them. So you're going to go around that again and make sure that you get plenty on there because you don't want any of your stuff coming out. You want everything to be sealed nice and tight. So I'm going to let that piece just dry for a minute and I'll go ahead and add these 2 together. This is my other piece of plastic acetate. You could also use cellophane. And again, make sure you have them lined up on the right side so everything's matching up correctly. And it is. I'm going to flip that over and I'll add my glue around this one. Okay. And you'll want to just pick this up here and I'm going to lay it down, make sure it's aligned. And for this next part, I recommend waiting 15 or 20 minutes before you move on to adding our confetti shaker items in the middle here because you need to let this glue have a little bit of time to dry so that our confetti and stuff doesn't end up trying to come out of the sides. The shaker part here is now prepped and ready to go, and the glue is mildly tacky, but nothing's sliding on me, so I can go ahead and proceed with the next step. So I have here some little snowflakes. I got these off of Amazon, and there's some other glitter places like Glitter Glams and things like that, which are great. And they have these little tiny, you know, I don't even know what you would call them. I don't feel like confetti is the right word. It's not quite glitter because they're actually little shapes. So I guess you could just call them like confetti shapes or glitter shapes. So these are going to work really well to put on the inside. And I'm just going to put some right into the center here of the cellophane. You want to make sure that you're doing this on the piece that has the craft board going around it, because we're going to be adding this part as the top. So you want to add a generous amount, but obviously you want to make sure you can get it closed, and do your best to keep it away from the edges initially, because we want to make sure that nothing's going to like creep out on us as we're trying to get the glue to seal. So I'm going to add 2 different varieties of snowflakes here. One's white and one's iridescent. And then I also have some silver stars here. And I wanted to show these 2 methods because they both are equally pretty, but some people may not like the shaker option because it's a little additional work, as well as, you know, if you're not a fan of having anything that's glitter-like around, then you may not prefer this. But I wanted to show 2 variations in this process here. So once you get your pile in the middle, then you want to very gently just flatten it out. That way we'll be able to get that piece on top of it. So again, try and keep a little bit of a distance from the edge. Obviously it's going to get closer to the edge, but try and keep a little bit of a distance and just get it flat enough to where we know we can get our top piece on here. And once you've done that, go ahead and get your glue and go around it again. And then we're gonna have to line this up and let it set for probably a good 30 minutes to get this glue to dry. Okay, and then once you get the glue on there, you just wanna take this piece, again with the frame side up, and you wanna set it right on top there. Give everything a good press, and then you're just gonna let this alone until it dries. So you may want to put like a book on top of it or something to keep everything pulling together and a nice tight seal around the edges here to make sure that as it's drying it's not neglecting to seal part of this, and then your, you know, shaker confetti part will come out. So you might want to stick just like something slightly weighted on top, just make sure it's perfectly flat, and we're going to let this dry for a little bit. You will notice in our templates that there is also an envelope. You will need, if you're following a similar size, and I don't recommend going much smaller than what I've set up here in the video for the card, you will need a longer mat for this. So you'll want one of the 24-inch mats in order to cut out this envelope piece here. But what you're going to do is, once it's been cut out, we already went over this in Design Space, you're just going to fold along those score lines. Just like that. And I'm using like a glitter stock here, so mine's extra thick. And then you're going to want to get these creased down, and you're going to want to put some glue here as well. And you're definitely going to need to put like a book or something on top of this, because it's not going to want to stay down on its own, especially if you're dealing with like a heavier cardstock like I am, a glitter or heavy cardstock. So be generous with your glue here. And then get that flipped right on there, get lined up. And like I said, you're going to want to put something like a stack of paper or a book or something on top of it just for maybe 10 minutes while it sets up. And then in order to close the card, you can just slide it through the little slot that's right there in the center to keep it closed. So I'm going to set this aside to dry for a few minutes. Okay, so the couple of remaining parts that we have here is our base piece just to finish it off, and then our little Let It Snow sign here. So I'm going to show you this part, and for this part you do want to make sure it's standing up, so it's a lot easier to do. Actually, it's necessary to have it standing up in order to do this part. So I like to add this one on first, the one that's towards the back first, because then we'll place this one on in the front, and it'll have a nice smooth finish in the front. So that's how I recommend doing it. So to get started, I'm just gonna pull this one off again, and I'm gonna put glue right here on this piece. And then you just wanna place that on the back there. And you'll wanna line it up so that the corners of the bottom of our snow globe here are falling right into those creases on our base piece there. So for this part, I push it down a little bit here to get it sticking. Okay, and then you're gonna repeat the process here in the front with the other piece. So you're gonna wanna just get this stuck on first. We're gonna glue the side parts on at the very end. So it's gonna kind of be flopping around on you for a minute while we get the first part attached. That part on right there. And then again, you want the back piece here, you want that one going in first on each side. And then we'll be adding glue here to finish it off just like that. So once you get that front part on, then go ahead and add some glue right here for the side part. Okay, and then close it around the side just like that. And here's a little hack for you. If you ever need an extra pair of hands while something's drying, grab a bobby pin and just stick it right on, and it'll hold it in place for you so you don't have to while it dries. Bobby pins are really ideal for stuff like that when you're gluing paper crafts. So while this is drying, I'm just gonna flip this over and add a little bit of glue. That together. Alright, so now that I've had some time for this to set, I'm going to go ahead and add this piece on the front. For this part, you could absolutely use glue. I'm using a runner tape here also. That can work really well for some of the simpler pieces that don't need glue. And I'm going to add my little sign on right there to the front. There we go. And here's the little message I talked about as being an option. Remember, all I said is you could just duplicate the base piece of this, and then you could just write on it with your Cricut and add it to the back here, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to add a little bit of this runner tape again. And I'll center that. There we go. So now you have a little message on the back and the front. And this is the cool part where you get to see it close. You can go down just like that. You can honestly go either direction, but I usually go towards the right. And you might need to do that once or twice just to get it kind of in the groove of everything, but after that it should pop open and close relatively easily. And you can just flatten it down here in order to slide it into the envelope that we made. There we go. We've completed our card. So for those who would rather do the shaker effect for one of the layers, you can add that in the same way we would anything else. So I'm going to remove the tree layer here and put in the shaker layer as an alternative. So both are great options, but I wanted to kind of show both because I like them both for different reasons. And I will say if you're adding the shaker in because it's a little thicker, you will have to whittle it in a little bit more, so just keep that in mind as you're doing this. Okay, there we go. So that's how that looks with the shaker behind it. So it's definitely a different approach, but it's really fun to have that shaker confetti look in it as well. And what's really great about this card is it can work as a beautiful holiday decoration. So it's not just a card, it's actually a decoration that you can put up year after year and your recipient can enjoy for many years to come. I hope you guys like this tutorial, and I will link all of my resources and a blog post and template links and everything below for you. I would love to know if you have any questions, and I would love to know if you have any other pop-up cards you would like me to make. Tell me in the comments below and I just might make them. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.